July 18th, 1984. Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Angelo Sepe, 42 years old, lay dead with multiple gunshot wounds to his head. Next to him, 19-year-old Joanne Lombardo, shot once through the mouth, execution style. Professional. The kind of hit that sends a message. A loaded gun sat untouched on a nearby table. Drug paraphernalia scattered across the room. Police would find no witnesses, no suspects, no justice. Just 2 more bodies in a basement, casualties of a war that never officially ended. This wasn't just another mobster getting whacked. Angelo Sepe had survived the deadliest robbery crew in American history. He'd walked through the blood-soaked aftermath of the Lufthansa heist when many others connected to that $6 million score ended up dead or missing. Many years after the Lufthansa heist, Sepe stayed alive while Jimmy Burke systematically erased everyone who could talk. But in the end, it wasn't the feds that got him. It wasn't Burke's paranoia. It was his own crime family. The Lucchese organization he'd served since he was a teenager put bullets in his brain. And the reason why reveals everything about how the Mafia really works. This is the story of the man Hollywood forgot. The one Goodfellas turned into comic relief. Frankie Carbone. The awkward guy told to make coffee to go. The one nervously warming up the car while others joked about chopping up bodies. The embarrassed husband dragged out of a Christmas party for bringing his wife in a flashy fur coat. That character was based on Angelo Sepe. But the real Sepe wasn't a punchline. He was one of Jimmy Burke's most trusted killers. A stone-cold enforcer who helped execute the most audacious airport heist in history, then helped Burke murder the witnesses. He survived longer than almost anyone in that cursed crew. And when his time finally came, 6 years later, it had nothing to do with Lufthansa. Here's what the movies never told you. Angelo Sepe's murder reveals the one unbreakable rule of Mafia life. You can steal millions, you can kill witnesses, you can lie to the cops, to your wife, to your crew, but you never, ever rob from someone under Mafia protection. Even if you survive the biggest heist in history, one bad decision years later will get you killed. That's exactly what happened to Angelo Sepe, and his story shows you how the mob really operates when the cameras aren't rolling. Angelo John Sepe was born in Ozone Park, Queens, New York City, in 1941, working-class neighborhood. Italian, Irish, Jewish families packed into small homes. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business, where fathers worked legitimate jobs during the day and ran numbers at night. Sepe's path was carved out early. By age 14, he had his first arrest. By his early 20s, he had a rap sheet that read like a criminal resume. Petty larceny, burglary, bank robbery, assault. 14 arrests before he turned 30. Lean, wiry, always looking like he'd slept in his clothes. Not the kind of guy you'd remember in a lineup, which made him perfect for the work. But here's what made Angelo Sepe different from the typical street thug. He had a soft spot, a weakness that humanized him in a world of sociopaths. Angelo Sepe loved animals, not just pets, stray animals, abandoned animals. His home became a sanctuary for rabbits, birds, turtles, whatever creature wandered in off the street needing help. He'd nurse them back to health, feed them, give them a safe place. Neighbors remembered seeing Sepe, this hardened criminal with 14 arrests, carefully wrapping a broken bird's wing with tape and popsicle sticks. The same hands that would put a bullet in your head without hesitation spent evenings caring for injured sparrows and homeless cats. That's the contradiction of these guys. Capable of extraordinary tenderness and unthinkable violence, sometimes on the same day. It's what makes them human and what makes them dangerous. In the early 1970s, Sepe caught the attention of James Burke, Jimmy the Gent, the legendary hijacker who ran operations out of Robert's Lounge in Queens. Burke got his nickname for a peculiar habit, After hijacking a truck, he'd take the driver's license, stuff a $50 bill into the wallet, and hand it back. The driver knew Burke had his address. He knew what would happen if he cooperated with cops. But he also walked away, $50 richer and with a story to tell. Burke made friends everywhere. Drivers started tipping him off about valuable loads. Port Authority workers looked the other way. Even some cops took his peanuts, as he called the bribes. Burke had a gift. He could corrupt anyone. Burke also had a gift for cultivating killers, and Angelo Sepe was eager to learn. Burke took him under his wing, taught him the craft, how to hijack trucks without firing a shot, how to intimidate without leaving witnesses, how to kill without hesitation. Sepe became part of Burke's crew, a tight circle of thieves, hijackers, and murderers connected to Paul Vario's faction of the Lucchese crime family. Understand something important here. This wasn't a crew of made men. Made guys don't do the dirty work. These were associates, guys who did the robberies, the beatings, the murders while dreaming of someday getting their button. That ceremony where you become an official member of La Cosa Nostra. For most of them, that day would never come. For some, like Sepe, they'd be dead long before they got the chance. Sepe's closest friend in the crew was Tommy DeSimone, Two-Gun Tommy, the real Tommy, not the Joe Pesci version from Goodfellas. DeSimone was tall, 6'2", good-looking, meticulously groomed. He styled his hair like Errol Flynn, polished his shoes to a mirror shine because he was a shoe shiner in his childhood. He carried 2 pearl-handled pistols, hence the nickname Tommy Two Guns. Sepe and DeSimone were inseparable. They hijacked together. They killed together. According to Henry Hill's testimony, they even committed murders while incarcerated, taking contracts from mob bosses, doing time with them. When you're that tight with someone, you trust them completely. You'd take a bullet for them, or put one in someone else at their request. That bond would make Sepe the perfect weapon for what was coming. By 1978, Burke had spent years in federal prison on extortion charges stemming from a Florida kidnapping incident. He got convicted for holding a gambling debtor hostage with Henry Hill. Both men got long sentences. Burke was paroled. He could leave during the day and evening, but had to sleep there at night. When he returned to Queens, he found his crew in shambles. They needed a big score. That score came gift-wrapped from the most unlikely source. Louis Werner, 47 years old, Lufthansa cargo supervisor at Kennedy Airport, married but separated, supporting an estranged wife, a girlfriend, 3 kids, and a $300 a day gambling habit on a $15,000 a year salary. The math didn't work. Werner owed $18,000 to the bookies. He couldn't pay. The juice, the interest, kept piling up. Every week he fell deeper into the hole. So Werner started thinking about his workplace. The Lufthansa cargo terminal handled millions in foreign currency, untraceable bills, American dollars that had been exchanged abroad by tourists and military personnel. No serial number records, perfect for stealing. Werner had already robbed Lufthansa once before. Back in 1976, he and a co-worker named Peter Gruenwald stole $22,000 in foreign currency. They got away with it. Werner had insider knowledge. He knew the security systems, the alarm codes, the employee schedules, the blind spots, and he knew when the big shipments arrived. In early 1978, Werner reached out through his bookie, Martin Krugman. Krugman knew Henry Hill. Hill knew Burke. Within days, the pieces were moving. Here's how the Lufthansa heist actually worked. This is the insider breakdown you won't get anywhere else. The opportunity. Every few weeks, the Commerzbank of Frankfurt sent large shipments of U.S. currency to Chase Manhattan Bank in New York. The money sat overnight in the Lufthansa cargo vault. On Friday, December 8, a shipment of $5 million arrived. But there was a problem. A Brinks armored car showed up to collect the money. Werner working as the supervisor that day, stalled them. He said they needed approval from a cargo executive. The Brinks guards argued this wasn't the procedure. But Werner disappeared for an hour and a half. The guards were finally ordered to continue their rounds without the money. Werner had just guaranteed that $5 million would sit in the vault over the weekend. By Monday morning, it would be gone. The inside connection. Werner provided everything Burke needed. A detailed sketch of the building layout, the exact location of the vault, the alarm system specifications. How many employees would be working the overnight shift? Their names, where they'd be positioned, the security procedures. Werner was meticulous. He'd planned this for months. His cut was supposed to be 10%, $500,000. Enough to pay off his debts and disappear. He never got a dime. The execution, December 11, 1978, 2:55 a.m. A black Ford Econoline 150 van pulled up to the Lufthansa cargo terminal at Kennedy Airport, 6 men inside, all wearing dark clothing and black ski masks. Angelo Sepe was in that van. His job was muscle, intimidation, control, make sure nobody played hero. At 3 a.m., 4 men entered the front of the building. 2 stayed with the van and drove around back. They cut the security fence with bolt cutters, replaced the lock with their own, and waited. Inside, the crew moved with brutal efficiency. They grabbed John Murray, a senior cargo agent trying to nap at his desk, ripped his jacket off, marched him to the lunchroom where 5 other employees were already lying face down on the floor. The robbers knew exactly who they were looking for. They called Rudy Eyrich, the night shift manager, telling him he had a call from Frankfurt. When he came upstairs, he walked into guns. They threatened him. They knew his address. They said they had men at his house ready to kill his family if he didn't cooperate. Eyrich believed them. He had no choice. One by one, the crew rounded up all 10 Lufthansa employees. Kerry Whalen, a transfer man, got pistol-whipped when he tried to run. Rolf Rebman, described as an RV enthusiast, noticed details. One of the robbers had his mask off for a moment. Rebman saw his face, mustache, expensively styled hair, brightly polished shoes. He'd remember that later when cops showed him photos. That robber was likely Tommy DeSimone. With all employees secured, the gunman forced Eyrich to disable the alarm and open the vault. Inside were 72 cartons. Each weighed 15 pounds. Inside those cartons was $5.8 million in cash and $850,000 in jewelry. Total take, around $6 million. At the time, the largest cash robbery in American history. The crew loaded everything into the van in less than 30 minutes. At 4:21 a.m., the van and a crash car pulled away from the terminal. No shots fired, no alarms triggered. Clean, professional, perfect. Until it wasn't. The gang drove to a garage in Canarsie, Brooklyn, where Jimmy Burke was waiting. They transferred the money and jewelry from the van into 2 cars. Burke and his son Frank drove off in one. Tommy DeSimone, Angelo Sepe, Joe Buddha Manri, and Frankie McMahon took the second car. Louis Cafora met his wife a few blocks away. Paolo Licastri, a Sicilian enforcer representing the Gambino family's interest, took the subway home, and Parnell Stacks Edwards was left behind with one simple job: dispose of the van. Take it to a junkyard in New Jersey, have it crushed, destroy the evidence. Stacks Edwards didn't do his job. Instead, he drove the van to his girlfriend's apartment in Brooklyn, did cocaine, and fell asleep. 2 days later, a cop spotted the van parked too close to a fire hydrant. He ran the plates, stolen. The van was impounded. Crime scene techs found fingerprints everywhere, Stacks prints. And just like that, the perfect heist started unraveling. Jimmy Burke's paranoia kicked into overdrive. Because here's the problem with a $6 million robbery. When you split it 20 ways, you've got 20 mouths that can talk 20 people who know what happened, 20 potential witnesses. And Burke had just watched the only piece of physical evidence get discovered because one idiot couldn't follow simple instructions. Burke made a calculation, a cold, brutal calculation. Rather than give everyone $400,000 or $500,000 apiece, it was easier to put a quarter bullet in their head. So he started eliminating everyone at that point. Those are Henry Hill's exact words from his testimony. And Angelo Sepe became Burke's executioner. 7 days after the heist, Tommy DeSimone and Angelo Sepe walked into Stax Edwards' apartment in Ozone Park, Queens. Stax was in bed. He trusted them. They were crew. DeSimone shot him 6 times in the head with a .25 caliber revolver. That was murder number 1. It wouldn't be the last. Martin Krugman went next. Bug Eyes, Marty, the bookmaker who'd connected Werner to Burke. Krugman kept asking for his cut. He'd been promised $500,000. But Burke had no intention of paying. Why would he? Krugman was a liability. He knew too much, he talked too much, and he kept showing up at Robert's Lounge when FBI surveillance was parked outside. In early January 1979, Krugman vanished. Henry Hill claimed Burke and Sepe killed him, dismembered his body with a chainsaw, and scattered the pieces. Krugman's body was never found. His wife, Fran, called Hill frantically. Hill went to Burke. Jimmy was sitting there, cool as ice. He said 2 words. He's gone. That's it. Hill had to go tell Fran that her husband was probably with a girlfriend. That's the life. You disappear, your family gets a story, and everyone moves on. Louis and Joanna Kafora, the whale and his wife. Kafora weighed 300 pounds. Had a voracious appetite. Burke told everyone to lay low after the heist. Don't make big purchases. Don't flash money. Don't do anything to attract attention. Kafora ignored him. He bought his wife Joanna a custom pink Cadillac. Within weeks, both Kaforas disappeared. Robert Frankie McMahon and Joe Buddha Manry. Both were on the robbery crew. Both worked at Kennedy Airport. Both refused to cooperate with the FBI in exchange for witness protection. On May 16, 1979, 5 months after the heist, both were found shot execution style in the back of the head, sitting together in a parked Buick in Brooklyn. Professional hits. Quick, clean, no witnesses. Paolo Licastri, the Sicilian drug trafficker sent by the Gambino family to ensure they got their $200,000 cut of the heist. Licastri had an inflated sense of his own importance. He annoyed Burke, talked too much, made demands. In June 1979, Licastri's burned, naked, bullet-riddled corpse was found on a trash heap in Brooklyn. Message sent, message received. Richard Eaton and Tom Monteleone, Florida restaurant and club owners accused of skimming from heist cash that was being laundered through their businesses. Children discovered Eaton's hog-tied, frozen body in a refrigerated meat truck. Monteleone disappeared. Teresa Ferrara, the occasional mistress of some crew members, was accused of being in on the skimming scheme. Her headless torso washed ashore in New Jersey. By summer 1979, 7 months after the heist, 9 people connected to Lufthansa were dead or missing, and Angelo Sepe was still breathing. That's remarkable. Why did Sepe survive when so many others didn't? Simple. He kept his mouth shut. He didn't buy pink Cadillacs. He didn't flash money. He didn't show up at Robert's Lounge when FBI surveillance was outside. He followed orders, and most importantly, he was useful. Burke still needed him. Sepe was the trigger man, the enforcer, the problem solver. As long as there were problems to solve, Sepe stayed alive. But that's not the crazy part. Here's where it gets interesting. Tommy DeSimone, Sepe's best friend, didn't survive. DeSimone was called to a meeting where he believed he was finally getting made, getting his button, becoming an official member of the Lucchese family. He never came back. The truth came out years later. John Gotti killed him. Not because of Lufthansa, because years earlier, Desimone had murdered William Billy Bats Bentvena and another Gambino associate without permission. You don't kill connected man without approval from the boss. That's the rule. The Gambinos waited patiently for their revenge. When Desimone walked into that room thinking he was getting inducted, he got bullets instead. His body was never found. Angelo Sepe lost his best friend, the guy he'd killed with, robbed with, trusted completely, and he couldn't do anything about it. Because, in the Mafia, you don't avenge unauthorized hits. You accept them, you move on. Sepe kept his head down, stayed quiet, waited for Burke's paranoia to pass. It eventually did. Burke got arrested for fixing Boston College basketball games, point-shaving scheme orchestrated with Henry Hill. Then Burke got convicted for murdering Richard Eaton, one of the Florida club owners. Burke would die in prison in 1996 from lung cancer, never officially charged with anything connected to Lufthansa itself. The feds couldn't build a case. Too many witnesses were dead. The money was never recovered. Louis Werner, the inside man, was the only person ever convicted. He got 15 years in federal prison. Sentenced on February 28, 1979, everyone else either died, disappeared, or got away with it. Angelo Sepe was one of the lucky ones. He got away with it for 5 years. Sepe went back to his life. Low-level crime, hijacking, robbery, staying connected to the Lucchese family through various crews. He'd served time in federal prison for bank robbery back in the 70s, got released, violated parole by associating with Burke, got sent back for 10 months. Released again in late 1979 after the FBI arrested him for being connected to Burke and Lufthansa. But they couldn't make charges stick. Not enough evidence. Too many witnesses dead. So they sent him back on the parole violation and called it a day. By 1984, Angelo Sepe was 42 years old, a criminal lifer with no legitimate skills and no way out. He lived in a basement apartment on 8869 20th Avenue in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. He kept a loaded gun nearby. He knew the life he'd chosen. He knew how it usually ended. According to police reports, Sepe once told associates a chilling prophecy. "When my time comes, my own people will kill me." That's not paranoia, that's reality. In Sepe's world, you don't retire to Florida. You don't die of old age. You die when you become a liability, or when you disrespect the wrong person. Here's what happened. The exact details remain murky because nobody was ever convicted. No witnesses came forward. No one cooperated. But according to multiple sources, including information from the book The Big Heist and testimony mentioned in later Mafia trials, Angelo Sepe made a fatal mistake in early 1984. He robbed a drug dealer, beat him up, took thousands of dollars in cash and cocaine. Not just any drug dealer, a dealer who paid protection money to the Mafia. Some reports say the dealer was connected to Vic Orena, a powerful captain in the Colombo crime family. Others say it was a Lucchese-affiliated dealer. The exact family doesn't matter. The principle is the same. You have to understand how the protection racket works. When you pay protection to the mob, you're buying insurance. You're paying for the right to operate without getting robbed, beaten, or killed. It's a tax, a tribute, and in exchange, the family guarantees your safety. If someone robs you, the family handles it. That's the deal. That's why people pay. If the mob lets someone get away with robbing a protected dealer, their protection becomes worthless. Every dealer, every bookie, every numbers runner in Brooklyn would stop paying. The whole system collapses. So when that drug dealer complained to his Mafia protectors, they had no choice. Angelo Sepe had to die. Not because he was a rat, not because he knew too much about Lufthansa, not because Burke ordered it, because he violated the protection racket. It's a business decision. Cold, calculated, necessary. The order came down from within the Lucchese family. The same family Sepe had served his entire adult life. The same family he'd killed for, robbed for. The same family he'd helped protect by executing Lufthansa witnesses. None of that mattered anymore. He broke the rules, and the rules are absolute. On the morning of July 18, 1984, someone knocked on Sepe's basement apartment door. He probably knew who it was. He probably knew why they were there. When you've lived the life as long as Sepe had, you recognize the signs. The knock comes early, before you're fully awake, before you can prepare. Multiple shooters, quick, efficient. Sepe was shot multiple times in the head. His girlfriend, Joanne Lombardo, was shot once through the mouth. The loaded gun on the table never got touched. The drug paraphernalia was left as window dressing. Make it look like a deal gone bad. Police found the bodies at 8:10 a.m. They investigated. They filed a report. They closed the case unsolved. Edward MacDonald, the federal prosecutor who'd been chasing the Lufthansa crew for years, told the New York Times, "We believe Mr. Sepe was one of the gunmen in the Lufthansa robbery." They'd arrested Sepe back in February 1979, but couldn't get enough evidence for an indictment because so many people involved in the robbery who had information we needed were killed. Now Sepe was dead too, the 11th person connected to Lufthansa to die. The case would remain officially unsolved until Vincent Asaro was finally tried and acquitted in 2015, 37 years after the heist. Not $1 of that $6.6 million was ever recovered. So what does Angelo Sepe's story teach us about the Mafia? Here's what you need to understand. The movies show you the glory, the money, the power, the respect. Goodfellas made it look glamorous, exciting, even fun. But Angelo Sepe's life shows you the reality. 14 arrests before age 30, years in federal prison, a basement apartment in Brooklyn, stray animals as your only family, your best friend murdered, your boss in prison, and when your time comes, it's your own people who pull the trigger, not because you betrayed them, because you broke a rule, one rule, and the price is your life. Sepe survived the Lufthansa massacre. He outlived Tommy DeSimone. He outlived Martin Krugman. He outlived the Caforas and McMahon and Manri and all the others. For 5.5 years, he thought he'd made it. He thought he was one of the survivors. But in the end, he died the same way they all did, with bullets in his head, in a basement. Alone except for a 19-year-old girlfriend who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. No glory, no cinematic drama, just another unsolved killing in Brooklyn. Another body the medical examiner had to process, another report the cops had to file and forget. The Lufthansa heist remains one of the most infamous crimes in American history. Books have been written, movies have been made, documentaries have been produced. But Angelo Sepe's name barely appears in any of them. He's a footnote, a supporting character. Frankie Carbone making coffee in Goodfellas, but Sepe was there. He helped plan it. He helped execute it. He helped bury the witnesses. And 6 years later, he got buried himself. Today, if you walk past 8869 20th Avenue in Bensonhurst, there's nothing to mark what happened there. No plaque, no memorial. Just another basement apartment in Brooklyn where someone lives now, probably with no idea that 4 decades ago, 2 people were executed there. That's how these stories end. Not with dramatic music and slow-motion sequences, but with silence, with forgotten addresses, with unsolved cases gathering dust in a precinct file room. Angelo Sepe lived the Mafia life for 25 years, and when it ended quickly, violently, permanently, just like he knew it would. When my time comes, my own people will kill me. He was right. If this story fascinated you, hit that subscribe button. We drop a new mob documentary every single week, diving deep into the stories Hollywood gets wrong. And drop a comment below. What should we cover next? Let us know. This is Mafia Talks, where we tell you what really happened.